Welcome to the Middle East, the region known for its political instability. And here lies one of the world's most complex conflicts, the Israel-Palestine conflict. Palestine is a geographic region in Western Asia, situated between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. Its strategic location at the crossroads of Egypt, Greater Syria, and the Arabian Peninsula has made it a significant area throughout history. From the 11th century BCE, the ancient Jewish state emerged in Palestine. Notable Jewish kings of this era include King David, known for defeating the giant Goliath, and Solomon, who built the first Jewish temple. Today, most of what is known about this period comes from the Old Testament. However, it highlights an important fact. Jews have had a long-standing presence in this land, predating Arab conquests. After King Solomon's death, the Jewish state weakened, fell into civil war, and was eventually divided. It was conquered by the Babylonians and the Assyrians. By the 8th century BCE, Jewish states were completely destroyed. Palestine fell under successive rules of the Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, and Roman empires. During their expansion, Arab Muslims conquered the area in the 8th century CE from the Romans. Through various changes, Palestine continued to be controlled by Muslims for centuries, under the Ayyubid, Mamluk, and Ottoman empires. In the late 19th century, after 2 millennia of dispersion, Jews initiated the Zionist movement, aiming to establish a sovereign state in the Middle East. Simultaneously, the Arab nationalist movement emerged, seeking independence from the Ottoman Empire. With rising anti-Semitism in Europe, a wave of Jewish immigration to Palestine began in the early 1880s. Naturally, the local Arabs were displeased with this influx, planting the seeds of conflict. The Ottoman Empire sided with the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, during World War I, fighting against the Allied powers, Britain, France, Russia. The defeat of the Central Powers led to the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire into several independent nations. Post-war, Palestine, which then included all present-day Israel and Jordan, was placed under British mandate by the League of Nations, tasked with governing the area until it could be handed over to its rightful owners. But who were the rightful owners, Arabs or Jews? On November 2, 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter to Lionel Walter Rothschild, a leader of the Jewish community in Britain. The letter was brief, just 67 words, but its content sent shockwaves through Palestine, the effects of which are still felt today. The letter promised that the British government would establish in Palestine a national home for the Jewish people and would facilitate efforts to achieve this objective. This letter became known as the Balfour Declaration. In essence, the Balfour Declaration was a promise from a European power to the Zionist movement to help establish a national home in a region where Arab Palestinians made up more than 90% of the population. Arab nations argued that since the land had been under Muslim rule for over a millennium and the majority of the population was Arab, Palestine should be part of an Arab state, possibly Syria. However, the British government contended that the Jewish kingdom had existed in parts of Palestine for over 1,000 years, and that while Arabs had several states covering millions of square kilometers, Jews did not have their own state. The British Mandate was established in 1923 and lasted until 1948. During this period, the British facilitated mass Jewish immigration to Palestine, leading to increased tensions between the two communities. Tensions escalated, eventually leading to the Arab Revolt, which lasted from 1936 to 1939. In April 1936, the newly formed Arab Higher Committee called on Palestinians to launch a general strike, withhold taxes, and boycott Jewish products to protest against British colonial rule and the increasing Jewish immigration. The 6-month strike was brutally suppressed by the British, who launched mass arrests and conducted house demolitions as punishment. The British Mandate phase in Palestine, which lasted from 1923, finally came to an end in 1947 after the United Nations General Assembly passed Resolution 181. This resolution implemented a plan to partition the land of Palestine into an Arab state and a Jewish state, while the holy city of Jerusalem was to be placed under international Most Jews in Palestine and around the world were pleased and accepted the United Nations Partition Plan, with both superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, also agreeing to it. However, the Palestinians and the Arab community did not accept it because the United Nations plan allocated about 55% of Palestine's territory to the Jewish state, including most of the fertile coastal areas. At that time, Palestinians owned 94% of historic Palestine and comprised 67% of the population. Following the United Nations resolution, the Jews officially declared the establishment of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. Just hours after the Declaration of Independence, the Soviet Union was the first country in the world to recognize the State of Israel, and the United States quickly followed suit. The Arab countries, including Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, and North Yemen, were determined to crush the newly born State of Israel, so they invaded Israel, leading to the outbreak of the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. In the end, Israel emerged victorious, retaining all the territory allocated to them by the United Nations and capturing an additional 60% of the territory designated for the Arabs in Palestine, according to the Partition Plan. The remaining 40% was divided among the participating Arab countries. Jordan annexed the West Bank, and Egypt took control of the Gaza Strip. As for Jerusalem, according to the United Nations Partition Plan, it was to be internationally managed, but this plan was never implemented after the war. Israel annexed the western part of the city and declared it the capital of the country, while Jordan occupied the eastern part. This war resulted in approximately 15,000 casualties. Around 750,000 Palestinians were forced to flee, leading to a massive exodus of Arabs from Palestine to neighboring countries. In 1967, the Arab countries planned to attack Israel a second time. In a preemptive strike for self-defense, Israel launched an offensive against Syria, Jordan, and Egypt, leading to the outbreak of the Six-Day War. The war ended in a resounding victory for Israel, which captured the West Bank, including East Jerusalem from Jordan, the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria. In 1973, the military forces of Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, aiming to reclaim the territories lost in the Six-Day War. However, the invasion ultimately failed in the face of strong Israeli resistance. For Israel, although they successfully counterattacked in the later stages, the heavy losses in both weaponry and manpower made them see the need for peace negotiations with the Arab bloc. Under the Camp David Accords of 1978, brokered by the United States, Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. In return, Egypt officially recognized the State of Israel and withdrew from the anti-Israel coalition. In 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, was founded by Yasser Arafat, primarily operating out of Egypt. The organization initially aimed to destroy the State of Israel through struggle. After the Six-Day War, the PLO was forced to flee to Jordan and later relocated to South Lebanon, which it used as a base for launching attacks into northern Israel, as well as hijacking campaigns worldwide. After a failed assassination attempt on an Israeli diplomat by the PLO in 1982, Israel responded by launching a full-scale attack on Lebanon, the PLO's haven. Palestinian armed groups were quickly defeated within weeks, and the PLO headquarters were evacuated to Tunisia in June under Yasser Arafat's decision. By the early 1990s, international efforts to resolve the conflict began. The Oslo Accords of 1993 were considered a significant step in the peace process. Under the terms of the agreement, the PLO recognized the existence of the State of Israel and committed to renouncing violence. In return, Israel also recognized the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people. Additionally, the PLO was allowed to move out of Tunisia and establish the Palestinian National Authority in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. This agreement was seen as a turning point. For the first time, the PLO accepted the two-state solution, meaning they no longer demanded sovereignty over the entire land of Palestine. However, the accord faced significant opposition from extremist Islamic groups within Palestine, notably the Hamas movement. They condemned Arafat for compromising with the enemy and immediately launched a terror campaign against Israelis. peace once again proved elusive. PLO leader Yasser Arafat passed away in 2004, and a year later, the Second Intifada ended. Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip were dismantled, and Israeli soldiers along with 9,000 settlers left the area. A year later, Palestinians voted for the first time in a general election. Hamas won the majority vote. However, a Fatah-Hamas civil war erupted, lasting several months and resulting in the deaths of hundreds of Palestinians. Hamas expelled Fatah from the Gaza Strip, and Fatah, the main party of the Palestinian Authority, regained control of areas in the West Bank. In 2007, Israel imposed a land, air, and sea blockade on the Gaza Strip, accusing Hamas of being terrorists. Up to the current conflict, Israel has conducted 4 prolonged military operations in Gaza in 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021. Thousands of Palestinians have been killed, and tens of thousands of homes, schools, and office buildings have been destroyed. In 2012, the United Nations passed a resolution upgrading the Palestinian Authority's status to non-member observer state. This status change was described as recognizing the de facto sovereignty of the Arab Palestinians. The current peace process still faces many obstacles, particularly from those who do not support the two-state solution, especially from the extremist Hamas movement in Palestine. Recent events show that the long-standing conflict, which has lasted nearly a decade, is far from over. Discussing the Israel-Palestine conflict could take an entire day and still leave aspects untouched. Thank you for joining us as we condense the history of this intense and ongoing conflict into just over 10 minutes. If you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.